Listen, what if I told you there are SUVs out there so stubborn, so indestructible, so outrageously dependable that they basically treat mileage like a casual suggestion? I mean vehicles that don't care about trends, don't care about fancy tech, don't care about the fragile feelings of mechanics who never get to see them in their shop. These things just run. And while everyone else is out here financing rolling tablets with 4 wheels and a dozen sensors waiting to ruin their week, the smart buyers are quietly scooping up these 5 unkillable beasts that simply refuse to die. They don't ask for much. A little oil, a tank of gas, and they'll outlive your student loans, your job, your relationships, and maybe even the infrastructure they're driving on. And the crazy part? You don't need a trust fund or a winning lottery ticket to get one. These are the SUVs that'll still be running when cockroaches are running the planet. All right, let's kick things off with an SUV so common you've probably stopped noticing it, until you realize it just never stops showing up. The Toyota RAV4. Now I know exactly what you're thinking. Really? The little suburban shuttle that every yoga instructor and real estate agent seems to buy? That one? Yes, because under all that cheerful normal person energy is an SUV that was engineered with the single-minded goal of never dying no matter what you do to it. The RAV4 isn't reliable. No, it's aggressively reliable. It's reliable to the point of being rude. You could ignore every maintenance light, treat it like a moving storage locker, and it'll still start the next morning like, yeah, okay, let's do this. There's a reason used car lots are full of RAV4s with odometers so horrifyingly high they look like they've been used for intergalactic travel. And it's not because they broke down, it's because their owners finally got bored of owning something that never caused them pain and traded it for a bad decision. See, Toyota did not try to be clever with the RAV4. They didn't try to break ground. They didn't try to reinvent the wheel. They just made every single component so conservatively engineered that failure becomes a theoretical idea instead of an actual possibility. Pop the hood, and you'll find an engine designed with the same philosophy as an old cast iron skillet. Simple, effective, and nearly impossible to destroy. The 2.5-liter 4-cylinder might not impress anyone with speed, but it will absolutely impress you with how it handles abuse. Toyota's engineers basically locked themselves in a room and asked, what if we designed an engine that could run even if the owner forgets to change the oil until their kids graduate? And then they built exactly that. Thick internals, oversized oil passages, cooling systems designed for desert expeditions, and tolerances so tight you could probably use the engine block to measure diamonds. This thing can run hot, run cold, run neglected, run overloaded. It just runs. And then there's the transmission. While other brands are out here slapping twin-clutch gearboxes and experimental CVTs into everything they build, Toyota quietly made an 8-speed that shifts smoother than butter melting on a stack of pancakes. But smoothness is just the side benefit. The real magic is in the fact that Toyota built the transmission like they expected owners to tow things they definitely shouldn't be towing, crawl through traffic on hot days without mercy, and forget what a transmission fluid flush is for the first 120,000 miles. It takes all of that abuse and responds with, cool, anything else? The RAV4 suspension is the kind of design that makes engineers smile. Not because it's exciting, but because it's so idiot-proof a teenager with a cheap socket set could repair it. McPherson struts up front, simple rear setup outback, bushings that outlast friendships. Toyota wanted something that could survive remote villages, inner cities, snowstorms, dusty highways, and everything in between. The RAV4 rides like it's permanently shrugging off whatever the world throws at it. And let's not forget the electrical system. You know how modern cars freak out the moment a sensor is even slightly confused? The RAV4 doesn't do that. Toyota basically said, no weird electronics, no crazy integration, no fragile systems that melt down when it rains. The wiring is simple, the modules are conservative, the electronics are designed by adults who understand that car owners do not want to reboot their dashboard like a laptop. You want proof this thing never dies? Look up photos of ancient RAV4s still roaming around in countries with dirt roads, inconsistent fuel quality, and climates that can melt soles off of shoes. Look up RAV4s in Alaska that have survived winters harsher than a breakup text. Look up RAV4 serving as taxis in countries where maintenance is a luxury and repairs happen when something literally falls off. They just keep going. And the best part? Parts are everywhere. Everywhere. You could be in the middle of nowhere and still find someone who has a spare RAV4 part lying around. Toyota built so many of these things that the aftermarket is basically bottomless. Need brakes? Cheap. Need a starter? Cheap. Need a whole new engine? Somehow still cheap. It's like buying a vehicle made out of Lego pieces that the whole world produces. But we can't ignore the elephant in the dealership. RAV4s are not cheap used. They're not even pretending to be, and there's a reason for that. They hold their value so aggressively that it's almost rude. You could buy a RAV4, drive it for 10 years, rack up enough miles to make a delivery driver sweat, and you'd still get a resale price that other SUV owners could only dream of. I once talked to a guy who tried, with intention, to destroy his RAV4. He wanted to upgrade and hoped the car would give him an excuse. So he drove it like a man possessed. He ignored every warning light. He put in the wrong oil. He treated that poor SUV like it was an unpaid intern. And what did the RAV4 do? It kept running. He eventually accepted defeat, kept the car, and now tells everyone it's the most annoying thing he's ever owned. Is the RAV4 exciting? No. Is it going to thrill you? Absolutely not. Will it make you question your life choices in a good way because you realize you've been overpaying for overcomplicated vehicles your whole life? Yes. The RAV4 is the oatmeal of SUVs. Not flashy, not sexy, but it will keep you alive, full, warm, and running for decades. And if that's what Toyota calls basic, wait until you see what Mitsubishi calls normal.
If the RAV4 is the quiet honor roll student who never missed a day of class, then this next SUV is the grizzled veteran who's seen things, real things, and doesn't like to talk about it. Number 2 is the Mitsubishi Montero, a vehicle built with enough over-engineering to make a military contractor blush. And before someone in the comments says, "Bro, Mitsubishi barely makes cars anymore," let me tell you something. This SUV is so tough, it genuinely outlived its own public reputation. If the RAV4 is oatmeal, the Montero is a can of beans that survived a nuclear blast. This thing wasn't designed for your daily commute to work. No. It was designed for sand dunes, jungles, deserts, war zones, and whatever planet Mitsubishi assumed we'd colonize by now. The Montero is the reason Mitsubishi engineers used to walk around with a level of confidence that Honda engineers only dreamed about. You think I'm exaggerating? Let's talk to Car Rally. The Montero didn't just compete, it dominated. It won 12 times. You don't win the most brutal off-road race on Earth because you're nice to drive. You win because you're built like the automotive equivalent of a medieval castle. When Mitsubishi built the Montero, subtlety was not part of the plan. Under the hood, you got engines that were less like finely tuned instruments and more like iron anvils with pistons attached. The later 3.8-liter V6 didn't scream power. It calmly stated, "I will outlive you." It wasn't flashy, it wasn't dramatic, it was built to tolerate bad fuel, high heat, low maintenance, questionable decision-making, and entire lifetimes of rough driving. This engine has survived everything except maybe a dealership finance manager's upselling attempts. But the foundation of the Montero's immortality is the chassis, a fully boxed ladder frame. Most modern SUVs use unibody designs because they want to save weight, improve fuel economy, and appeal to buyers who say things like, "I just love how smooth the ride is." The Montero said, "No thanks." Mitsubishi gave it a frame that belongs on farming equipment. And that frame has been used to tow broken trucks off mountains, drag stranded vehicles out of riverbeds, and carry families across terrain that shouldn't even be considered terrain. The suspension is another wild story. Mitsubishi installed a multi-link independent setup with the kind of travel that lets the SUV flex like it's doing yoga in the Sahara. On pavement, the ride is surprisingly comfortable, shockingly so. But the moment you leave pavement, oh man, the Montero transforms. It digs in, claws forward, and does not care how terrible the road is, or how much you regret your spontaneous impulse to take a shortcut. And then there's the super select four-wheel drive system. Not the knockoff stuff, The real one. The one that lets you switch between modes without stopping. The one that keeps traction even when the laws of physics are filing complaints. This isn't AWD that wakes up and helps you after the problem already happened. This is proactive, brilliant engineering, the kind that makes you wonder why more vehicles don't use systems this good. But here's the best part. The Montero is stupidly cheap on the used market, criminally cheap. You're getting an SUV that has served in humanitarian convoys, crossed continents, survived literal combat zones, and been used by people who treat maintenance like a myth, yet you can buy one for the cost of 2 new iPhones. The interior may have been frozen in the 90s forever, the fuel economy might make grown adults sigh, and the infotainment might genuinely be a calculator glued to the dash. But when it comes to staying alive on the road, nothing stops a Montero. I know someone who bought a Montero with 210,000 miles on it for less money than he spends on groceries in a month. His friends mocked him, called it the bucket of bolts. 2 years later, it's still running, still climbing mountains, still hauling gear, still starting up every morning. Meanwhile, 2 of those same friends are on their 3rd repair bill for their luxury crossovers. The Montero doesn't break. It continues out of spite. But let's pivot to an SUV that proves David sometimes beats Goliath, and not because David is stronger, just because David refuses to give up. I'm talking about the Suzuki Grand Vitara. The little SUV everyone forgot existed until they see one cruising around with faded paint, a dent in the bumper, and an odometer that looks like it belongs on a retired 747, and yet it's still running. Suzuki may have stepped back from major markets, but the vehicles they left behind? They're like little engineering Easter eggs forgotten by time, but beloved by those who know. The Grand Vitara is the perfect example. It's compact, it's practical, and shockingly, it's built like a tiny tank wearing a polite smile. Unlike most small SUVs, the Grand Vitara didn't try to be cute, clever, or soft. Suzuki gave it a body-on-frame layout because they apparently decided that even compact family SUVs should be prepared for Armageddon. This is the kind of construction you expect on big, heavy-duty trucks, not tiny crossovers that look like they should be picking up kids after school. But that's what makes it special. It has off-road bones in a city-friendly package. The engines in the Grand Vitara are the epitome of simplicity. The 2.4-liter 4-cylinder, not fast, not dramatic, not complicated, just simple, honest machinery. No turbos, no weird timing systems, no delicate components waiting to explode. If the engine could talk, it would say, "Feed me oil and we're good." And the 3.2-liter V6, same deal. Built for longevity, not lap times. And the 4-wheel drive system? Absolute brilliance. A proper low-range transfer case in a vehicle this small is just hilarious, in the best possible way. It means the Grand Vitara can go places owners never intended to drive it. It can crawl over rocks, climb steep trails, and handle mud that shouldn't even be considered terrain. Its simplicity is the core of its reliability. No air suspension, no complicated electronics, no parts that require special order imports. Everything is straightforward, everything is durable, everything is easy to repair. And because Suzuki sold millions of vehicles globally, parts availability is still surprisingly solid. I once met a guy who had a Grand Vitara with 280,000 miles on it. The paint was sunburned, the seats were held together with hope and duct tape, the exhaust made a noise that sounded like a cartoon jalopy. Yet the thing started instantly. No hesitation, no drama. It just worked. He said the only major repair he ever did was replacing a water pump, back when he still had hair. People underestimate the Grand Vitara because it's small, but what they forget is that small things are often the hardest to kill. Roaches, ants, Nokia flip phones, the Grand Vitara belongs in that species of unstoppable creations. And if you think a compact SUV with old-school bones is impressive, wait until you see a vehicle that blends modern refinement with ancient reliability philosophy.
If the Grand Vitara is the small but mighty underdog, this next SUV is the quiet overachiever that somehow ended up everywhere without anyone remembering how it got there. Number 4 is the Subaru Crosstrek, the crossover that looks adorable but has the survival instincts of a wild animal that's escaped captivity 3 times and refuses to go back. Now, before someone says, "Bro, the Crosstrek isn't a real SUV," let me remind you of something very important. A category doesn't matter when your vehicle consistently outlives everything else in the parking lot. And the Crosstrek has become the unofficial vehicle of people who need something that will get them to work, through a snowstorm, up a trail, across a mountain, and back home with groceries in perfect condition. What makes the Crosstrek a legend starts with Subaru's obsession, and I do mean obsession, with symmetrical all-wheel drive. Most manufacturers use all-wheel drive as a marketing buzzword. They slap a badge on the tailgate, route power through a system that wakes up only after the wheels have already started crying for help, and call it a day. Subaru looked at that strategy and said, "No, that's lazy." Subaru designed a drivetrain where every wheel is working from the moment you put it in drive. Not reactive, proactive. It's like having a paranoid friend who constantly double-checks the locks, scans every room before entering, and sits facing the door at restaurants. The Crosstrek doesn't wait for trouble. It prevents trouble before it even knows it's trouble. And then there's the engine. Subaru's Boxer engine isn't like anything else on the road. While other engines stack their pistons vertically like an apartment building, Subaru lays theirs flat, punching outward like two boxers trading jabs. That gives the Crosstrek an absurdly low center of gravity. Picture a cat crouched before pouncing, stable, balanced, ready for anything. The design reduces vibration, improves balance, and creates a powertrain that ages like a cast-iron skillet. It might not make big power, but it'll survive a zombie apocalypse without breaking a sweat. The 2.0 and 2.5-liter versions of this engine aren't fast, but that's the point. Subaru tuned them for longevity, not thrills. They run cool. They sip fuel. They rarely suffer catastrophic failures because there's nothing inside that's overly stressed. These engines are not divas. They don't complain. They don't demand premium fuel or special rituals at the mechanic. They just work. Now let's talk ground clearance, because the Crosstrek quietly has more ride height than some full-sized SUVs. At 8.7 inches off the ground, you could drive over obstacles that would make other crossovers scream "nope" and turn around. Snow berms? Easy. Rutted trails? No problem. Random debris on the road that fell off a construction truck? The Crosstrek steps over it politely like it's avoiding eye contact with a stranger. The suspension is another underrated masterpiece. Subaru tuned the Crosstrek with this perfect balance of softness and strength. On the road, it's smooth enough to feel like a plush couch with wheels. Off-road, it absorbs impacts that should honestly require medical paperwork. You can hammer this thing through potholes that would cause a luxury SUV's air suspension to crumble like stale cookies. The Crosstrek's components just shrug and keep going. And don't even get me started on the construction. Subaru builds these things with Japanese precision, the kind that makes other manufacturers reevaluate their life choices. The welds are clean, the tolerances are tight, the body structure is rigid without being heavy. Subaru isn't chasing fancy materials or experimental designs. They do what works and they repeat what works until it becomes bulletproof. Now yes, the Crosstrek uses a CVT transmission, and yes, the internet loves to blame CVTs for everything from engine failure to global warming. But Subaru's CVT is not your typical CVT. This one has been refined over years of testing, reinforced with stronger components, and cooled properly to avoid overheating, the #1 killer of cheap CVTs. Subaru even programmed it to mimic traditional gear shifts so it doesn't sound like a blender having an emotional breakdown. The result? Crosstreks regularly hit 200,000 miles with nothing but oil changes, brakes, and tires. Owners treat them like pack mules, hauling dogs, camping gear, kayaks, furniture, questionable purchases from Facebook Marketplace, and the Crosstrek just nods politely and carries on. And speaking of owners, Crosstrek people are a different breed. They're not flashy. They don't buy cars to show off. They buy cars that won't leave them stranded, that won't require a second job to maintain, and that will quietly endure every season of their lives. There's a reason Subaru owners wave at each other on the road. It's not a club, it's a support group for people who made the correct choice. But here's the real kicker. The Crosstrek is practical. Painfully, beautifully, wonderfully practical. The cargo area is big enough to store a weekend's worth of adventure gear. The seats fold into a perfect surface for sleeping. The roof rails aren't decorative, they're functional. You can throw kayaks, cargo boxes, mountain bikes, or whatever midlife crisis equipment you're into up there. The cross-trek doesn't judge. Is it fast? No. Is it luxurious? Not unless you're deeply impressed by cup holders. Will it make your neighbors jealous? Probably not, unless your neighbors value reliability more than ego. But will it get you where you want to go every single day with zero drama? Absolutely. And now, speaking of zero drama, our final SUV is the one you've been waiting for. The Quiet King, the sensible legend, the vehicle that has defined reliability for multiple generations and shows no signs of slowing down.
And now, we arrive at the final SUV on this list, the Quiet King, the unstoppable veteran, the vehicle that has earned so much trust that entire neighborhoods seem to run on them like an unofficial ecosystem. The Honda CR-V, the SUV that doesn't just avoid braking, it actively refuses to. If reliability were a personality trait, the CR-V would be the friend who always shows up, always remembers your birthday, and somehow never loses their keys. Here's the thing about the CR-V. It's not trying to impress you. It's not pretending to be rugged. It's not flexing with 1,000 horsepower or a grille big enough to double as a solar panel. It's just relentlessly competent. And that's exactly why it's outlasted trends, outlasted rivals, and in some cases, outlasted its only owner's expectations by decades. Under the hood, Honda stuck with what they do best. Engines that simply refuse to die. The CR-V's 4-cylinder power plants, especially the legendary K-Series engines, have built a reputation so solid that entire forums exist just to brag about how many miles they've accumulated. These engines are engineered with tolerances so precise they might as well have been built under a microscope. They don't rattle, they don't struggle, and they don't age like normal engines. They mature, they settle. They become smoother with time, the same way your favorite old leather jacket gets better every year you wear it. The power delivery isn't exciting, but it's honest, a steady, predictable push that makes daily driving feel effortless. Honda's VTEC system adds efficiency exactly when you need it, and power exactly when you ask for it. No drama, no surprises, no mechanical midlife crises. Then there's the transmission. Honda has had some questionable moments in the past, sure, but the CR-V has always been the golden child. The 5-speed automatics on older models? Practically immortal. The newer CVTs? Refined, strengthened, cooled properly, and programmed so smartly that they avoid the classic CVT death spiral of overheating and shredding themselves into dust. These units are designed to last because Honda knows CR-V owners don't abuse their SUVs. They depend on them. And the real-time all-wheel drive system. It's the automotive equivalent of a guardian angel that only steps in when necessary, saving fuel while still giving you that reassuring hit of traction when the road turns slick, icy, muddy, or downright mean. It's simple, smart, and incredibly effective. No gimmicks, no over-engineering, just a setup that works every single time you need it. The body structure of the CR-V is another reason it lasts so long. Honda overbuilt these things, using high-strength steel in critical areas, reinforcing the sections that take the most abuse, and designing a cabin structure that handles impacts like a professional wrestler catching someone mid-flight. The CR-V isn't just reliable, it's safe. Safe enough that families buy one, then another, then pass it down to their kids when they start driving. And the suspension? Oh man, Honda tuned the CR-V's ride like they were trying to win a comfort competition. It absorbs rough roads without turning the steering wheel into a vibrating paint mixer. It glides over imperfections, and yet it still feels tight, controlled, confident. You can load it with passengers, groceries, camping gear, or 10 years worth of questionable life decisions, and it still rides with that signature Honda calmness. And here's where the CR-V becomes financially unstoppable: the resale value. These things hold their value like they're painted with anti-depreciation coating. You pay a little more upfront, but over 10 years, you end up saving money because you're not fixing expensive failures, not replacing it early, and not watching your vehicle lose half its value in 3 years. There are CRVs out there with 300,000 miles still running their original engines and transmissions, still serving as daily drivers. They're like the wise elders of the SUV world: quiet, experienced, dependable. I once met someone who sold their sporty, luxury SUV because they were tired of seeing the repair shop more than their family. They switched to a CRV and described it as the most boring car I've ever been grateful for. That's the CRV experience. It doesn't try to entertain you. It tries to protect you, save you money, and quietly exceed every expectation you had for long-term reliability. So, there you have it. 5 SUVs that aren't just dependable, they're borderline immortal. Machines built with the kind of engineering philosophy the modern world seems to have forgotten. Vehicles designed to last, not expire on schedule. The Toyota RAV4, the quiet champion that never quits. The Mitsubishi Montero, the overbuilt war machine that refuses to die. The Suzuki Grand Vitara, the compact underdog with the heart of a tank. The Subaru Crosstrek, the AWD wizard that goes further than it looks. And the Honda CR-V, the humble workhorse that outlasts trends, owners, and expectations. And if you're sitting there thinking, man, why don't more manufacturers build vehicles like this anymore? Well, that's the exact problem these 5 solve. You don't need the latest tech. You don't need 50 driving modes. You don't need a touchscreen big enough to double as a home theater. You need something that starts every morning, survives every season, and doesn't treat your wallet like a chew toy. If this video helped you dodge an unreliable money pit or pointed you toward an SUV that actually respects your bank account, then crush that like button, it owes you money. Hit subscribe, tap the bell, and join the community of smart buyers who know reliability never goes out of style. Tell me in the comments which of these 5 legends you'd trust with your daily life, or if I missed a vehicle so durable it deserves a spot on the next countdown. And if you know someone who's about to blow their savings on a ticking time bomb of an SUV, send them this video before it's too late. Because at the end of the day, the best SUV isn't the one with the most hype. It's the one that starts tomorrow morning without excuses, without drama, without fail. I'll see you in the next one.